Welcome to More Than a Few Words Marketing Conversation. This is your host, Lorraine Ball. And today we're going to talk about storytelling. Now, you guys know I love a good story, but we're going to talk about a very specific type of storytelling. And I've invited Bill Shander. He's an author, an educator, an information designer to join me for this conversation. He's just written a new book about whispering to your stakeholders, and I think it's going to be a fun conversation. Bill, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Okay, so you call yourself a stakeholder whisperer. You've written this book on this. When you're talking about stakeholders, who are you talking about?
So I really like the definition that R. Edward Freeman came up with. He's a professor at UVA who came up with the whole idea. And he said it's anybody who can affect or is affected by what you're doing. So it's your boss, your client, your investors, et cetera. They can affect stuff. And it's also the end user of the products that your company puts out, et cetera. So it's pretty broad. Just about everybody's a stakeholder in one sense or another.
So I want to influence everybody, but as a marketer and as a business owner, where do I start today? So this is a really long chain from manufacturing through production and marketing and sales and customer satisfaction. How do you decide where on that stakeholder chain you start?
So what I would say is that it sort of depends on the current moment and the current task at hand, right? So every task, every moment is an opportunity for stakeholder whispering. And so today, your boss came in and said, hey, we're launching a new product, a new service. We need to put out a new app, or hey, put AI in it, or whatever the request is today. All right, well, then the stakeholders for that thing are going to be a specific set. Like for today's task, let's make a new brochure for our new product. All right, the stakeholders are the end users, the people are going to read this brochure and we're trying to convince them to buy this product. They're pretty high on your list of stakeholders. Your boss who asked you to do it, believe it or not so high on the list. They're requesting it, but the most important stakeholder in that case is the consumer. Production, they might be pretty high important stakeholder because there are technical limitations to the printing that can be done, et cetera. So every moment your stakeholder list, the priority is going to change, the hierarchy changes, and so it's very dynamic.
Awesome. Okay, so I want to be an effective whisperer. What are the skills that I need to master in order to win friends and influence people all up and down my stakeholder chain?
Yeah. And I have to talk about two aspects of stakeholder whispering. One is definitely influence. It's a really important part of it. And I'll address that second if that's okay. The first part is actually acknowledging that our stakeholders often don't really know what they need from us. So part of stakeholder whispering is helping them figure it. So in the example I gave before, hey, give us a new brochure for this new product. Okay. Do we really need a brochure? Is that actually what we should be doing? Or should we be doing an app or a new website or, the 12 other ideas that might be, good at this moment? So whispering is the art of the conversation with your stakeholders to help them really think through, is this the thing we should be doing and should we be doing it that way? Getting past their subconscious and their bias. Then to your question about influence, yeah, how do you influence them? One of my favorite books of all time is Influence by Robert Cialdini. And he essentially wrote a book, it's called Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion. And in it, he describes the 6 categories of influential behavior. And one of the most important ones is expertise. And so if you can bring to the table expertise, you're going to be much more influential. So rather than saying, hey, rather than making the brochure blue like all our other brochures, how about we make it pink or yellow or whatever? Instead, you might say, hey, research has shown that yellow brochures increase spending by 46%. A Harvard study, by the way. When you bring expertise to the table, you're going to be much more persuasive. So I'd say lean on that whenever you can. And read Cialdini's book to get all the other good advice in there.
As you were talking, and I was thinking back to the first part of that is where it's really the art of diagnosing the problem, because people come and they're like, they go to a doctor, my hand hurts. Well, that's great, but your hand hurts because you banged up your elbow, and it is really kind of diagnosing all the signs that lead to that. But also, I think a lot of marketers run into a situation where their clients have gotten advice from multiple people and helping them sort through that, and then
Absolutely
using those influence skills to move them in the right direction.
Yeah. And it's like therapy. It's about asking them good questions, getting them to think differently. It's helping them see things in a new way.
Okay, so I and helping my customers see things in a new way. I'm trying to kind of influence and move them in a path. What else can I do with stakeholder whispering? Where else does it play into my business and my marketing mix?
It plays in so many ways. I mean, one of the most important things to realize is this, that humans are constantly being driven by our subconscious. The basic idea is that anytime I do anything, my subconscious is driving the bus. And part of the subconscious is just doing things how they've always been done, inertia. And so if you simply acknowledge it, that at every moment that's happening. So we have a new product, make a brochure, new product, brochure, new product. It's so automatic, it's so fast. If you simply question everything, the term that I like to use is engage your useful paranoia, otherwise known as critical thinking, right? At every moment, question everything and engage in these conversations to really dig out the underlying needs. Like the tagline in my book is uncover what people need before doing what they ask. So it's all about that diagnosing the real need and the real problem, as you said. If you simply do that at every moment, in every way, about everything you do, not just even in work, by the way, then you're going to be more effective at everything that you do. But it's useful paranoia. It's not going off the rails paranoia. It's, restrained, useful paranoia. So it's productive and not distracting.
And that's, I think, is a real challenge, is finding that balance, because as you're running through this and you're like, question everything, there's a moment at which you're like, I can't question whether or not I should be breathing at this moment. We're going to just do that. But you can also still, I think, get to a place where maybe you're questioning too much or taking on too many of these aspects at the same time.
Yeah.
How do you prioritize?
It's so important, and it's a gray area. It's a fine line, right? And so I'll give an example. It's not about work. Pass the salt. All right. If someone says pass the salt, I'll probably just pass the salt. I don't need to question that. On the other hand, if my cousin says pass the salt and I know he has some high blood pressure issues, it's in the back of my mind. I have some domain expertise here. Maybe I should question that request. So, there's actually some interesting studies about critical thinking that find that critical thinking is learnable, which is good news. But critical thinking also cannot happen when you lack any domain expertise. I can't be a critical thinker about nuclear engineering. I know nothing about it, but I can be a critical thinker about marketing and the things that I do know. And so in that context, your boss says, make a new brochure for this product. And we always put out a brochure. And of course, we're going to do a brochure. You can't not do a brochure in today's world. Of course, we're going to do it. So maybe I won't question that request. But when he says, make all the text blue and all the graphics green, maybe I can question that one because it doesn't match our brand colors or whatever the reasons might be. And so, everything with a grain of salt. Part of critical thinking and part of being aware of your own subconscious bias is also being aware of when you're pushing a little bit too far down that chain. And so, I would say, especially to younger junior people who have a harder time doing this anyways, getting their stakeholders to really engage with them in this way, start small. Question one thing. Really is to dig deep into one thing. Ask one question even. And then you can expand from there as you build trust with your stakeholders.
Absolutely. I love that advice, because asking questions just leads to more conversation and takes you places that you just wouldn't go if you just sat there and went, yeah, okay, five blog posts, great, got them, we're all set.
Yeah, no one should be an order taker, and the world values those who have those good conversations. You'll be thought of as a strategic partner, not an order taker. So you'll be the one who gets the promotion rather than being left behind.
Absolutely. Well, Bill, this has been fabulous. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me today.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
And I'm going to encourage folks, if you are interested, if you want to learn more about Bill, about his book, about all sorts of things that he's doing, head over to billshander.com, BILLSHANDER.com. It'll be in the show notes. Thanks again, Bill.
Thank you.
And if this conversation inspired a question or an idea or a thought, hop over to morethanafewwords.com/contact. Leave me a note, or better yet, a voicemail, and start the conversation in a new direction. This has been another episode of More Than a Few Words.